My beloved child, stop scrolling for just a moment. Do not rush past these words. Something is waiting for you here, something your heart has been trying to understand without having the language to explain it. What you are about to hear was meant to find you at a very specific moment in your life, in this exact emotional season, while you are carrying questions you have not told everyone about. I need you to pause, breathe, because there is something moving beneath the surface of your life that you cannot see yet. You have felt it, haven't you? That strange sensation that someone is thinking about you even when no one is speaking your name. That sudden memory that arrives without warning. That unexplained heaviness in your chest. That moment when you are doing something completely ordinary, and suddenly your mind returns to one particular person. You tried to dismiss it. You told yourself it was nothing. You tried to be logical about it. But there are moments when your soul recognizes something before your mind can explain it. And that is why you are hearing this now, my beloved child. Heaven has watched you walk through a season of emotional uncertainty that you rarely talk about. There were nights when you looked completely fine to everyone else, yet inside, you were quietly asking the same question again and again. Is there really someone meant for me? Did I miss them? Did they move on? Why does my heart still feel connected to someone I cannot reach? You may have smiled the next morning and continued your life as though those questions had never existed, but I heard them. I saw the tears you wiped away before anyone noticed. I saw the moments when you opened an old conversation, looked at a photograph, remembered a voice, or wondered what might have happened if circumstances had been different, and there is something you do not know yet. The silence between you and this person may not mean what you think it means. Pause here. Because this is where the story begins to change. There is a reason certain memories refuse to disappear. There is a reason your heart has not completely released what your mind has repeatedly tried to bury, and there is a reason that, lately, something inside you has felt as though an invisible chapter is approaching its final page. You have been sensing movement, not necessarily movement you can see, not a message appearing on your phone, not a knock at your door, something deeper, a shift, a stirring. A subtle rearrangement of circumstances that has been happening beyond your awareness. Your soulmate is carrying something they have not been able to say, and before you misunderstand what I am telling you, listen carefully. This is not about chasing someone. It is not about begging for love. It is not about abandoning your dignity or returning to a situation that wounded you. This is about understanding what has been happening behind the silence. Because sometimes two people can be separated physically while an unfinished emotional story continues speaking in the quiet places of the heart, and your soulmate has been hearing that voice too. There have been moments when they almost reached for you. Almost. They picked up the phone, they thought about sending something, they remembered a conversation. They wondered whether you would answer. Then fear stepped in, pride stepped in, regret stepped in, perhaps circumstances stepped in, and the moment passed, but another moment came. And then another, until something inside them became impossible to ignore. You may have assumed they forgot you. You may have convinced yourself that their silence was an answer. But what if the silence was actually a battle? What if they have been fighting feelings they did not understand? What if they have been trying to convince themselves that walking away was easier than admitting what they still feel? Stay with me, because the next part is where this becomes deeply personal. There is a particular memory they keep returning to. It may not be the memory you expect. It could be something incredibly ordinary, a sentence you said, a look you gave them, the sound of your laughter. The way you listened when they were struggling, a small moment that seemed meaningless at the time, but somehow, that moment stayed. Years can pass, circumstances can change, other people can enter their life, and still that tiny memory can return when they least expect it. Why? Because some moments become emotional landmarks. They remind a person of who they were when they felt truly seen. And there was something about you that made them feel seen, that frightened them, because being seen is beautiful when you are ready for it, but when you are carrying wounds, being truly seen can feel terrifying. You touched a part of them they had spent years protecting, and instead of moving closer, they may have moved away, not because you meant nothing, but because you meant more than they knew how to handle. My beloved child, I want you to understand something before you make any decision about this connection. Do not confuse distance with indifference. Do not confuse silence with absence. And do not confuse delay with denial. There are things that take place in the invisible before they become visible in your life. Seeds grow beneath the soil long before anyone sees green. Dawn begins changing the sky before the sun appears, and sometimes a heart changes long before the mouth finds the courage to speak. Your soulmate has been changing, quietly, painfully, in ways you may never have witnessed. There was a moment when they realized they could no longer keep pretending they were unaffected. Something happened. Perhaps they encountered a place that reminded them of you. Perhaps a song unexpectedly brought you back. Perhaps someone said something that sounded exactly like something you once told them. Perhaps they saw a couple laughing together and suddenly remembered what it felt like to laugh with you. And for a few seconds, the world around them disappeared. They were back. There, back in that moment, back with you. And this time, instead of pushing the memory away, they allowed themselves to feel it. That was significant, because emotions that have been suppressed do not disappear. They wait, they gather, they return when the heart finally becomes strong enough to face them, and your soulmate is beginning to face something, regret. Not necessarily regret that they met you, regret that they did not understand the importance of what they had when they had it, regret over words left unsaid, regret over distance, regret over choices made from fear. Regret over the possibility that they hurt someone who never deserved to be hurt, and perhaps the deepest regret of all is this: they wonder whether you still remember them, they wonder whether you still care, they wonder whether too much time has passed, they wonder whether the door is already closed. And there is something almost heartbreaking about that question, because they do not know what is happening inside your heart either. You have both been living inside separate versions of the same uncertainty. You wondered whether they still cared. They wondered whether you still cared. You waited for a sign. They waited for courage. You interpreted silence as rejection. They interpreted your silence as closure. And somehow, two people who may still carry something real have been standing on opposite sides of an invisible wall, each afraid to be the first to reach through it. But that wall is beginning to crack. Can you feel why this message found you now? There is a reason your attention was drawn here. There is a reason you almost scrolled away. Maybe you were about to ignore this. Maybe you have heard messages like this before. Maybe part of you said, "This cannot possibly be about me." And yet you stayed. That matters. Because sometimes the most important messages arrive when the heart is skeptical enough to protect itself but curious enough to listen. I am not asking you to abandon reason. I am asking you to notice. Notice what has been happening around you. Notice the unusual timing. Notice the memories. Notice the dreams. Notice the sudden emotional waves. Notice the repeated signs that make you stop and wonder. Not every coincidence is a prophecy. Not every memory is a command. But sometimes a pattern becomes too persistent to ignore. Understood. You may have noticed that whenever you finally decide to let this person go completely, something brings the memory back. A name, a place, a song, a date, a dream, a strange encounter, a sentence, something. It keeps happening, and you have asked yourself why. Maybe because your heart is not asking you to chase the past. Maybe it is asking you to understand what the past taught you. Maybe this connection was never meant to make you lose yourself. Maybe it was meant to awaken something inside you that you had forgotten existed, your capacity to love, your ability to feel deeply, your understanding of vulnerability, your recognition of what you will and will not accept, your knowledge of what it means to be emotionally present. And now, something is shifting because you are no longer the same person you were when this connection first touched your life. That matters more than you realize. Because even if this person returned tomorrow, you could not return to the relationship exactly as it was. You have changed. They have changed. The circumstances have changed. The old version of the story cannot simply be repeated. If something returns, it must return differently. It must return with truth, with maturity, with accountability, with courage. And that may be exactly what is being prepared, but there is another layer, a deeper one. Something your soulmate has been hiding not only from you, but from themselves. They are afraid that if they reach out, you will see how much they still care. They are afraid that you will reject them. They are afraid that you have become stronger without them. They are afraid that someone else has taken the place they once imagined was theirs. They are afraid that you will ask questions they do not know how to answer, and most of all, they are afraid that you will look directly into their eyes and realize how much of their silence was actually fear. That is why their movement has been slow. But slow does not mean still. Something can move beneath the surface while everything above it appears unchanged. That is what has been happening. And there is a moment coming in this story that you must be prepared for, not because I want you to wait by your phone, not because I want you to obsess over signs, not because I want you to put your life on hold. No, I want you to become so grounded in yourself that whatever happens next, you will recognize it clearly, because when something genuine approaches you, you will not have to destroy yourself to keep it. You will not have to beg. You will not have to prove your worth. You will not have to become smaller. Love that is meant to enter your life will require honesty, not desperation, and that is why your preparation has mattered. The loneliness, the endings, the disappointments, the nights when you wondered whether your heart would ever feel safe again, none of those moments were meaningless. They were teaching you discernment. They were teaching you patience. They were teaching you the difference between longing and alignment. They were teaching you that love is not merely intensity. Love is consistency. Love is courage. Love is truth. Love is choosing someone without abandoning yourself. And your soulmate is beginning to understand this too. Perhaps they once believed that feelings alone were enough. Now they are learning that feelings without action create pain. They are beginning to understand that if they want another chance, they cannot simply return with nostalgia. They must return with truth. And there is one truth they have been rehearsing in their mind. They have imagined what they would say if they finally stood in front of you. They have replayed the opening sentence. They have wondered whether to apologize first, whether to explain, whether to admit they never stopped caring, whether to tell you about the nights they thought about contacting you, whether to say the words they were too afraid to say before. And every time they imagine that moment, their heart races, because they know something. If they reach out, they cannot hide behind silence anymore. The truth will have to come out, and that is exactly why the next movement may feel sudden. Sometimes a person spends months doing nothing, then one emotional moment breaks through every wall they built. One realization, one conversation, one memory, one unexpected encounter, one moment of courage, and suddenly, everything changes. You have been asking for clarity, but clarity does not always arrive as an explanation. Sometimes it arrives as an event, sometimes it arrives as a person standing in front of you with words they should have spoken long ago. And my beloved child, there is something about this connection that you still do not know, something that happened during the time you were apart. Something your soulmate experienced that changed the way they see you. You were not there, you did not witness it, they never told you, and perhaps they have not told anyone. But that moment forced them to confront a truth they had been running from. It made them realize that losing access to you was not the same as losing feelings for you. It made them realize that distraction was not healing. It made them realize that pretending to move on was not the same as actually moving forward. And it made them ask the question they had been avoiding for far too long: what if I let the person I was meant to love walk away because I was too afraid to become the person they needed? That question has been haunting them, but here is where you must listen carefully. Do not make their realization your responsibility. You cannot heal them for them, you cannot force their courage. You cannot carry their regret. Your task is not to chase what is running away. Your task is to remain open without abandoning your boundaries, to remain hopeful without becoming dependent on an outcome, to believe in love without making one person the source of your worth, because something extraordinary happens when you stop begging life to give you a specific answer. You become ready to receive the answer in whatever form truth chooses, and that is where your story is heading. Toward truth, not fantasy, not wishful thinking, not endless waiting. Truth, the kind that makes everything that came before suddenly make sense, the kind that explains why the connection felt so powerful, why the separation hurt so deeply, why the memories returned, why your heart kept asking questions, why you kept encountering reminders at the strangest times, and why, after everything, a small part of you still wondered whether the story was truly over. My beloved child, I need you to hold on to one thing as we move deeper. Do not rush toward the person. Let the truth come toward you. There is a difference. If they are meant to speak, let them speak. If they are meant to return, let them return with action. If they are meant to apologize, let the apology come from them. If they are meant to explain, let them carry the courage required to explain. You have already carried enough. You have already questioned enough. You have already waded through enough silence. Now something else is being asked of you. Stand still, not in fear, in strength. Because while you have been wondering whether your soulmate is trying to reach you, something has been happening behind the scenes that you have not yet seen. A decision has been made, a hesitation has been broken, a door that seemed permanently closed has begun to move, and there is a specific reason this movement is happening now. It is connected to something you thought had nothing to do with love, something in your own life, something you recently changed, something you finally released, something you finally stopped chasing, and the moment you let it go, the entire energy of this story began to shift. You thought you were losing something. You did not realize you were making space for a revelation. And that revelation is closer than you think. Because the person you have been wondering about is not simply remembering you anymore. They are considering doing something about it, and what they are preparing to say is not what you expect. There is a message they have written, rewritten, and hesitated to send. A truth hidden inside a few simple words. A confession buried beneath fear, and when you finally understand what those words mean, you may look back at this entire season of your life differently, because the reason they stayed silent, the reason they walked away, the reason they kept returning to your memory, and the reason they are now desperately trying to find a way back into your world, are all connected to one moment. One moment you never knew about, one moment that happened when you were no longer there to see it, and my beloved child, that is the part of the story heaven is about to reveal next. My beloved child, that moment happened when you were no longer there to see it. And if you knew what happened, you would understand why their silence was never as simple as it appeared. There was a day when something inside your soulmate finally broke open, not in the dramatic way you might imagine. There was no thunder, no grand announcement, no obvious sign that the world had shifted. It may have looked like an ordinary day from the outside, but inside them, something changed. They were alone with their thoughts, and for once, there was nowhere to run, no distraction was strong enough, no conversation could drown it out, no new person could replace the memory, no amount of pretending could make the feeling disappear, and suddenly, they remembered you. Not the version of you they had created in their mind.